what we're doing at the early phase in terms of initial skill development has a relation to the final refined mastery of the skill.
That was the voice of George Stoy, today's guest, and talking about the concept of performance strands. More about that soon, but first, a huge thank you to all of the support that came out of the last 2 episodes at the end of last year. I can't thank you enough for your donations and, of course, for investing in your own surfing education. This episode was recorded back in the end of March last year, just before my wife passed away. And it's been really nice to come back to this episode and edit it, because it's inspired me so much, just not just as a surfer, but as a surf coach as well. And I think it's going to inspire you to invest in surf coaching. And if that's something you can't do because you don't live near a good surf coach, then I just remind you that there's the Ombi Online surf coaching platform that we discussed in detail in the previous episode. There's also a link to that program in my bio on my Instagram, on the website, and in the show notes to this episode. I've also started a Surf Coach Directory webpage on my website, and I would like to build that. So if you have personally had a great experience with a surf coach, please let me know, mike@surfmastery.com. Okay, today's guest is George Stoy out of the United Kingdom, at George's Surf School on Instagram and georgessurfschool.com.
To be someone who earns a living coaching surfing. So and you are as well, aren't you? So are you based in Malibu?
I am.
Fantastic. We obviously, I don't, you were, I'm not sure where you were when I was last in California, but I'm not sure you were in Malibu. I definitely whizzed through that way. I was there in 2016 when I was speaking to you.
I would have been in Australia then.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly.
Do you still teach skiing as well?
A little bit, but less so, and obviously not at all this year. And one of the things that I found very challenging with lockdown is that interaction and the coaching. And you know, it's more than it's much more than a job, isn't it? As you know, you sort of forget there are elements of it that are part of your DNA and part of something you've done for a huge amount of time, and you get that interaction and that coaching and that problem solving and all those elements and how you use your body and your brain together. You take for granted until you can't do it anymore. So yeah, I've missed it. So yeah, no skiing this year. We did a bit last year, but yeah, I'm still doing both. I would say the surfing side has definitely taken over more as we've grown and as the coaching team has grown and as the seasons have extended. And I think really the whole appetite for high quality surf coaching has grown and changed as well, which I'm really delighted to see. And there've been some amazing people within the industry that have really driven that as well. And it's certainly great to see, because originally, when I first started out, and I know we've had this conversation before, it was a fairly small group of people globally that were coaching surfing in quite a progressive way. I think it's fair to say. What are your thoughts on it? How do you we've known each other. When did we first meet?
2012, 13 maybe
even before that. 2012 was the London Olympic year. It might have even been before then.
You might
when
be right.
Portugal trip.
Okay, it would have been, you're right, it would have been 2009 even, maybe.
There you go. Yeah.
Remember that the spot in Portugal was like almost untouched back then, remember?
Unbelievable. That slab out the front was pretty special. I mean, that whole place and that whole trip was thoroughly. It was a really good trip and a really amazing spot. And I think we scored some pretty good waves as well.
Yeah. I love that part of the world.
Yeah, it was fun. Do you go back? Have you been back to Portugal?
No.
Pretty much. We were going every year. The last one I did was to Cascais. There's some incredible waves around there as well. That was September 2019.
So when did you start being a surf coach? That must have been back then, right in the early 2000s, was it?
I started coaching 2004, 2005. So that's when I started to, and it was through, as you know, it was through my journey to find someone to coach me. And I sort of, I ended up realizing that actually I almost was the answer to my own questions sometimes, and going out and, in the way you had, sort of being curious and going and trying to answer the questions, and then looking across other sports and other, certainly at the time, more established coaching frameworks to start piecing together how I was going to develop my own surfing, and also how I could then help other people. And I think the real hook for me, the real time that it really got me, was when I realized that actually there were other benefits. There were people, I was taking people in, I was teaching them to surf, and I was almost seeing them come out of the water a different, almost like a different person to when they went in. And I know obviously now there's a lot said about blue health and the therapeutic benefits of surfing, but back then there just really wasn't. And it was just something that I saw, and I was used to coaching people and taking them up mountains, and I was seeing something. It was kind of almost that, but sort of supersized, that experience and that being in nature. There was just something extra to it. And it was amazing to see, but it also was it just sparked a real curiosity into me, into understanding it more, and being able to give a really holistic, coach people in a really holistic way, and be really curious about surfing in the ocean and the waves and the water, and deliver really good technical coaching, but also learn more about the therapeutic side of it, and explore that as well simultaneously. So that was definitely, that was sort of I think that was the thing that if I'm honest about it, that really set me on the path that I've managed to stay on.
So do you think there are things that you can do or not do as a coach that can either inhibit or give space for that sort of therapeutic aspect of surfing?
I think first and foremost with coaching is, what is someone's motive for coming to you? So people will have different motives, and they'll come to you, and I think you have to, you want to understand that, and really understand why someone's coming to you. And so you're engaging them, you're delivering on that. And I think if you do that well, those other parts of the sort of therapeutic side of it will occur. But there are definitely things that you can do consciously to get people into a better headspace. I mean, if you take it down and you reduce it, I mean, surfing is playing. You won't, if you're a contest athlete and you're going out and you're based on pure performance, then it's your job, it's your livelihood, and you're competing, and that will have a different focus and different pressures to it. Even then, when you talk to a lot of athletes, they'll all reference, or most of them will reference, an understanding of why they surf, because it makes them feel better as well. They love surfing. But yeah, as a coach, in order to kind of facilitate that, there's definitely things you can do, and also helping people with a more holistic approach. So I think I guess the thing we specialize on is we really work on recreational surfers who want to improve, and that's our focus, is helping people unlock doors to progression and to achieving things that they thought that perhaps they couldn't achieve. And that involves building a relationship with the ocean, and it involves feeling comfortable in that space, and that involves looking at without focusing on fears, moving into spaces that are sometimes less comfortable for people, and then making those spaces comfortable spaces that then facilitates progression. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So so with your target market, your audience, your average clientele, what's the biggest mistake you see in that group?
I think there's a couple of classics, and I think you'll probably get similar answers from most coaches. Often equipment. an attitude towards equipment is, if you don't have the right board under you for not just that wave, but that day, and then, how long the amount of time you've been able to spend in the water and the level of fitness you're at, you essentially want to have fun. And the only way you have fun is by sliding along a wave and enjoying that sensation. And that means, I think it was Rob Machado who said foam is fun. There's this idea that we should all be riding a particular board in a particular way is I don't particularly sign up to that unless you're surfing to a competition criteria where you are working towards a very defined criteria. I kind of quite like people to find their own space in their ocean, their own thing. And I think the equipment that they take is the equipment that people have is sometimes not appropriate. And I'm what we try to do is create a really fun open space where people, where we can swap boards and try boards. And I also love to have a go and surf the boards that the people who are surfing with us are on. I want to feel the kit, and I'm always curious about equipment and how it rides. So I try not to write off something when someone turns up. And sometimes people will turn up and you look at a board and you think, crikey, I'm not sure. We'll see how this goes. But I'll always let them, first session especially, I'll always let them work with the equipment that they know and then see kind of where they're at with it and then how we can help. But most of the time I'll spend getting people or trying to help people onto boards where they're just going to be able to pick up, take off and ride waves with a bit of margin for error as well. So you can make a little mistake and it not end up with you losing that ride or that wave. You can have a little wobble. And I kind of, certainly as I've got a bit older, I like that in my own surfing as well. I like to have a board that I really feel, I'm paddling into a wave and I know I've got the best board under me, and you relax. And of course, in being relaxed, you're in flow state and you just take off and go. You don't really kind of think about it too much. I also know when I've got the wrong board under me, because it's kind of the polar opposite of that. And you start to have a bit of a scrap, and then you start to maybe question things a little bit. And that's, of course, the space you don't want to be in. So I think if we're honest as surfers, we all will experience both of those places, depending on the waves we're riding and where we're at and what we've got under us.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, equipment. Yeah, most surf coaches will address equipment, but you said not only equipment, but people's attitude towards the equipment. Are there a few barriers sometimes when you suggest alternative equipment to people?
Yeah, sometimes. And I think different, sort of different demographic groups they'll become emotionally attached to different equipment, because sometimes it's linked to, it can become a bit linked to the image you want to project. And I've definitely been there. And I remember I had a little toothpick board, and I rode some waves on it. But actually, if I'd had another board under me, I would have probably caught and rode more waves and progressed faster when I was a teenager. So I'm kind of trying to help people. I guess the job of the surf coach is trying to not let people fall into the elephant traps you fell into. But sometimes that learning process is allowing people to make those mistakes, helping them, suggesting it, but then allowing them to make mistakes and then guiding them kind of back out of the elephant trap, I guess, a little bit. It's sort of having to see and believe it. But yeah, so that's what kind of I meant by the attitude towards it, and motive as well. Why, what do they want out of it? Why are people surfing? What's their thing? What are they getting out of it? And I think drilling down on that as well, you can then really help develop a relationship and a trust and a sort of safe space where you can usually take people way beyond what they thought they were capable of, and develop different, whether it's confidence in the ocean, confidence in slightly bigger surf, the knowledge needed or the fitness and conditioning needed to achieve those things. And also I think much more importantly, the mental resilience to be able to to do those things and have the confidence to take on a bit more, something, slightly above their outside of their comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah. So do you employ a few surf coaches as well?
Yeah, we've got a team of it's between 8 and 10 coaches now. So it was remember, it was just me for a long time, and then that journey of working with other coaches, I think personally that was a real, it was a big change point for me, going into, how was I going to pass on the knowledge and the way I did stuff, because I'd spent quite a long time developing it. And then I kind of realized you find the right coaches and people that are really, they're bright and they're really motivated to develop their coaching, and you realize that's, there's a real appetite out there. And there's certainly, like, when I started hiring coaches, there was an appetite both for a more structured approach and a more methodological approach to coaching and development, and there was also a real appetite for people wanting to coach that. And essentially, I think it's fair to say that's where it's the journey you and I were on. We're curious and we're asking questions and we're thinking. You find other coaches in that space, and it creates a really good knowledge sharing team dynamic where you've got curious coaches and they're bringing in their own expertise from areas that they've developed deep knowledge on as well.
And I'm guessing you've had a lot of coaches that have come from other surf schools and other coaching methodologies. Has there been any common barriers or mistakes that you've seen them try and bring into your school, or have you noticed any large gaps in their education from your perspective?
I guess there are a few things that that's quite it's quite a big generalization. What I have seen, which is more coaches coming through and developing quite interesting holistic programs. And I think different countries have had different approaches based on the sort of other sports coaching and things that are available. The main issue we've got, I would say, and I've been fairly openly critical of it, is that the surf coaching qualification is a 2-day qualification, and you can't cover a huge amount in 2 days. And I actually, I deliver it, and I try to run a mentoring process alongside it, because it's not if you look at any other industry or any other qualification, there's not much that you qualify to do in 2 days. And I think to take people out in the ocean and teach them to surf up to the level, it's sort of I think it's something culturally that is that needs a little work on. And I think your approach as a coach, educator, to develop that is something that I've been sort of, it's a drum I've been banging for a while, but you only change things from within. So there's work happening on it at the moment. And I think that opportunity, if people invest if they invest financially and time-wise into developing skills and developing coaching practices, and there's an element of standardization, and you're able to then record, and a lot of coaching is about data, it's about recording, and it's about testing a theory, and then what are the results you're getting across enough people to then really be able to understand what works and what doesn't, and then how you can adapt to different personality types. But in order to develop those skills, it's a combination of studying or being taught how to coach from a system that explains those elements to you, and then going out and learning. And I would say surf coaching is definitely, as a sport, surfing has definitely come more from the trial and error approach. So people actually out there just doing it and coaching, and then developing skills in terms of what works, what they see and what works for them. And that's why you've got quite a bit of, there's quite a bit of variation in terms of how people teach takeoff, or how people teach speed control of a surfboard, or even down to arms and turning. There's a lot of in the last few years, there's a lot of good stuff coming through on that, but there tended to be a way of doing it that every coach was taught, and every coach just kind of delivered on without questioning it. And I think that ability to create coaches that are level, they understand the fundamentals, but then they're able to question them, and evolve specific elements of it, that's when you get great coaches. But that's also when you get a sport that kind of takes a leap forward. The performance strand between people learning to surf and elite.
Yeah,
I think the thing that we've evolved and looked at is, I think there are fundamentals, and I think that from that first, your kind of how you deliver it is really different, but there are certain fundamentals that if you develop those correctly at the earlier phase, you're going to move into the capability to then develop much faster. So if you're not if you don't have to go through multiple unlearning phases, for example, you're going to
some people do
much smoother. Yeah, I mean, unlearning is, but I think it's kind of performance strands is what we look at. So we're always trying to examine and go, okay, when we're teaching someone to change direction for the first time, how does that relate to a high performance turn in the critical section of a wave? And ultimately, I should be able to see the DNA down through a performance strand. So we're essentially creating the correct building blocks. So if someone does develop their surfing through, and as they get coached, what we're doing at the early phase in terms of initial skill development has a relation to the final refined mastery of the skill. So I think that's certainly something that it sounds very geeky to kind of do it, and that's not, I'm not going to sit a 5-year-old down and sort of put it to them in those terms, but from a methodological and a planning point of view, I want to make sure that it's fun, it's play forms, but it's actually got some correct technical DNA in it as well.
Can you give me an example on that? Like, say
I think takeoff's a classic. That kind of thing. What is at what stage is it acceptable to use knees and coping mechanisms, and how you get up and riding? And we try to, wherever possible, get people into clean takeoffs. We can, we'll get kids leaping and jumping in plyometrics and moving in a way that hopefully will translate into a takeoff. If you let someone use their knees, well, that's easy. So I'll just stick to that, and I'll stick on the knee. And then getting off the knees can be quite a lengthy process. And I'd say certainly industry-wise, everyone's been pretty happy to let people use their knees and get up and riding. Okay, fine. As you progress through that journey, getting off the knees can be quite challenging. And certainly one of the things I took from watching the kids in Hawaii, they're all running around just going, no knees, no knees. And there was a real, it was definitely, it sort of amused me actually that there was this real clear thing. It had been really drilled into the kids that they weren't using their knees, and they used the tail pads on their boards really effectively to get up into position, and they had the strength to do it. I think there's sometimes assumptions made about what kids can and can't do strength wise. You've got kids, and actually you watch them leaping around and stuff, and I think if they learn the right movement, that not using your knees from an early age is definitely something that it takes out a layer of unlearning and relearning movement and movement patterns. What are your thoughts? Because you've seen lots of people with evolving takeoffs and
I agree with all of that. I like this thing you're saying, performance strand, how everything in the beginning should also be conducive to what is going to be at the end, kind of thing. Did you get that from? I imagine that's quite common in skiing. Did you get that from being a ski coach?
Yeah, it's common in most sports that are competed at professionally and in high levels, and it's just I've never heard it talked about in surfing. And I'm sure there are people out there. What I've not had a chance to do, the internet's pretty good for it, but I've not had a chance to have another kind of curious year where I go off and get to work with lots of different coaches. And I think certainly post lockdown, I'm really itching. I really want to go and do some collaborations and work with other coaches again, because I find I spend a lot of time training and mentoring coaches and developing and delivering the product that we have. And there's more stuff on the internet, but I like spending time with coaches and collaborating and sharing knowledge. And then, I find that a really good way of having kind of quite challenging ideas, but in almost like in a slightly more private way. Does that make sense?
Mm.
So I can, and there's quite a lot of stuff, people talk about things on podcasts and online and things, but I quite like the space to then put them into practice and see kind of, you can, see what the actual application is, and then how you translate it down through, through people surfing, through the coaching. And also it would be lovely if there was a central data gathering system, a way of coaches plugging in, like an international coach organization where we could plug in and try things and get data, global data on what's working and what isn't, and why, and who it works for. And I think experience as a coach, you build that, but if we were able to then combine forces and collaborate, it would be really, really powerful. And it would evolve. I think it would evolve the sport, but it would also involve, I think, how coaching happens. And I think generally surf coaching is improving at a pretty rapid rate, and people are now doing it as a full-time job. And it's certainly when I started, I don't know, I didn't know many other people who had gone, right, I'm going to be a professional surf coach. I'm going to earn a living out of it. It was I think I was quite a rare animal.
Yeah, especially in the UK.
Yeah, especially in the UK. But there are a few out there, so the UK. You've got to remember, the UK, from a coaching point of view, we produce some of the best coaches in the world in other sports. We've got amazing sports coaching resources and pedigree. It was just slightly difficult plugging into that as a surf coach. So I took myself back into other sports to evolve what I was doing, and I can guarantee you I was the only surf coach ever at any of those events or training sessions. I'm not sure if they ran now, whether I imagine that would be a different story, because you're motivated differently when you're how you pay your mortgage and how you put food on the table is defined by your ability to harness that knowledge and then make it relevant for people.
Yeah, it makes me think of Surf Simply and how well they've done too.
It's really interesting, because when I started out, Rue and I taught on the same beach, and I think we were basically up to the same thing, which was analyzing and going, okay, how do we, there's all this stuff going on, there's this industry, there's all these people doing this, but I think it could be done differently, and I think it should be done differently. And I remember him, but not that well. We didn't know each other that well, but it's kind of funny that we both came off the same beach. And I have huge respect, and I hear nothing but amazing feedback from what they're doing with the setup that they've built. Have you worked with him?
No, but I've listened to the podcast a lot, and
okay,
yeah, he breaks things down, in a lot of detail. Yeah, he's been very vocal about it too, which is great.
Yeah, which is I think that's absolutely fantastic. I don't know a huge amount about the setup that they've done. I know kind of generally about it, but I'd love to go, and that's somewhere where I would like to go and spend some time. And I think that kind of approach I find really appealing, in terms of how you then go deep on stuff and then create a way of making it relevant to recreational surfers, which, as I understand it, that's I think we've got a similar kind of, I think we're working with similar surfers.
Yeah.
Keen enthusiasts that have limited time to put into surfing. They haven't got as much time to surf as they'd like.
Yeah. What were some of the biggest, like, for your personal surfing journey back when you first decided that you wanted a surf coach personally? Do you remember some of the big plateaus that you got over? Do you remember any specific coaches that really helped you along the way back then?
What were the really big? That's a super question. Big things. I think it was being forced to answer certain questions. So being moved into spaces and looking at movement and looking at the interaction between the surfer, the board, and the wave, and making sure that they were all, like, one breakthrough is definitely that link up where you go, right, what kind of wave is it, what kind of board is needed, and what is the thing. And so what is the person doing, and what is their potential or limitations, what is the equipment, and then how does it relate within the context of the wave that they're riding, and how am I getting someone into a growth mindset in terms of looking at the waves, having a couple of different boards, and then going, well, I think this is the right board for this wave, but not being afraid to then, have a go on that, and then maybe switch out and change kit. So yeah, I think that linking those three things was really important. I think the understanding of the emotional journey. So coming in as a sports coach and looking for technical solutions to what might actually be more of an emotional journey or an emotional block. So that side of it is personally really, really fascinating to me. And it's what I've kind of done with skiing as well. I find that skiing journey, I find, nervous middle-aged adults are kind of almost like, if I had a speciality, certainly with skiing, that's it. And I find it really rewarding, because you're essentially getting people who haven't probably learned something new in a really long time, and so we'll tend as adults to move into spaces that flatter us. Going back into quite a challenging space and a learning space, I think it's really brave, and I want to encourage as many adults as possible to go and learn new things and challenge themselves and get into that space. And it's, I think life chucks stuff at us where we have to do that anyway, but then going and developing a hobby or an interest which forces you into that space, especially with a bit of fear or something that's outside your comfort zone, I think is a fantastically brave and really rewarding thing to do. So, guiding people down mountains and seeing them literally locked with that resisting the slide and not wanting to, and sometimes they're there because they love someone very much who skis and they really want to be a part of that, but actually they're just absolutely terrified by the whole prospect of it. And being able to guide someone through that journey and then watch them cruising around a mountain and achieving, coming through those barriers, I personally, I don't think there's a bigger rush or a bigger kick as a coach than that kind of than guiding someone on that emotional journey, and allowing them to physically, everyone is capable of it. You can see and you go, right, physically we can do this. It's whether emotionally we're going to allow ourselves and allow our body to do all the brilliant stuff that it can do.
It's so common in surfing too. I mean, you must see it with surfers all the time, especially once the waves get to a certain size and some people just freeze. They're like, nah, I'm not doing it.
First trip to Hawaii, I had to rewrite, like, it was the biggest learning curve of my life, 100%. And you go in, I was already a surf coach, I was already, pretty comfortable, and I just, had to just almost tear up everything I knew and start again. And it was great. It's a really great experience. I'd go back and I'd have to, I'd ask people and just say, look, and they half the time, we're going back to the equipment conversation. What works everywhere else doesn't necessarily work in Hawaii on the North Shore. You've got to recalibrate, rethink, and re-educate to surf it, and all your reflexes and everything else. Everything changes, and that was, to do that. I wasn't a teenager when I first went there. I was in my late 30s, early 40s, and my first trip there, and it was brilliantly humbling. And getting back into that space is great, because your empathy, it refuels your empathy as a coach. It moves you closer to the people you're coaching, because you go back to that kind of feeling of fear, that slight imposter syndrome, all these various things that we have as human beings. It's quite good to go back into that space, and you've been cruising around the world, surfing all the places you've surfed and navigating the lineups and feeling quite chilled, and then you're sort of, you're into a different space. And that's definitely been, if you're talking about experiences that are formative, that was definitely one of them. I also think every surfer, you grow up and you're bombarded with images of those waves and that whole thing, and the scenes in all the movies that you've the surf films that you've grown up watching and all the stuff that goes with it and the whole culture, it's quite an amazing thing to go and experience and enjoy. And I I'm very, very fortunate to have been able to go and spend time there, and I'm eternally grateful to the people that made it happen, to be honest, because it reconnected me with that journey and that learning journey, definitely.
So how do you relate that? You talked about relating it to your clients. I mean, for example, you're down at the beach with a client who's just intermediate surfer, recreational surfer, and the waves are just a little bit bigger than they're used to, and they're feeling apprehensive about going out. But you know, as a coach, that they're capable. How do you get them to go beyond their limit?
You can't generalize. It depends on the personality. So if I think if you know they can do it, deep down they know they can do it. I'm more concerned about people who actually don't have, like, they don't seem to have that feel, that limit. They'll just go for it, and physically they can get themselves in a real pickle. I think that's what I'm watching out for much more. And I mean, that's what makes me know. I remember like a lineup in Portugal, and it was just so sketchy. It was full of these very athletic, very strong European, mainly men, on kind of really nice boards, a lot of them, and they were just going for it, and there was no understanding of kind of, it was actually quite dangerous because there was just no awareness. And I think that's like, that side of it is what I know I'm answering a slightly different question, but I think as a coach, teaching that awareness, and that essentially you want to enjoy your surfing, you want it to be a safe space. And I think we have a moral and ethical obligation to make sure that we're equipping people with the knowledge and the skills and the manners to be a really welcome addition in any lineup, not kind of sort of weaponizing athletic young people to sort of go at it. That sort of, I think it's, we talked about motive and approach, and I think that how you share motive and approach is kind of different, and it's also culturally different. Some people are out and they just want to get as many waves as possible, and some people are quite happy to let other people ride waves and just pick off the waves that they want in a session. I think how that translates culturally is also really different, because it is a global sport. So I'm not sure I've answered your question very well, but in terms of settling people, I think I'll do a lot of swimming. So I won't even, and that's how I was taught as well. The guy at Raglan, I was all excited and hopping up and down. It looked like a really good day, and he didn't even let me take my board off the reef. It was like, no, you're going to swim out, and you're going to swim back. You're going to tell me the name of someone in the, all that kind of stuff, which is, it's pretty like Karate Kid style coaching, isn't it? But I think it was like, for me, the difference of then, like, it transformed my confidence in terms of knowing I could swim out and back, and feeling the currents and using the currents and body surfing and not getting in anyone's way. These are the experiences that I draw on and we put into our program. And I think once you've swum someone out and they've been through the impact zone, they're much more like, it kind of changes their approach with their board.
In nurturing the client in the right way, you would almost avoid that situation anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of, that's what I'm hoping. And there's always that learning moment. There's always the bit where the sort of head down paddle, and the kind of the awareness window does that a little bit, and it's a range of things. It's excitement, it's I guess coaching terms, it's the arousal curve, isn't it, where people kind of get fired up and the adrenaline's going, and it's trying to then move people back from that space into a much calmer approach. So calmly, reading the wave, timing the paddle, knowing they've got the strength and the technique to catch the wave, and then if they don't, accepting that there's lots of stuff going on with that wave that may mean you might or might not catch it, and understanding what those things are, so they don't go into a space of, sometimes you'll get people, especially quite driven people, and they'll tend to blame themselves. I think it's something that they've done, and actually with surfing, there's a huge amount happening with the water and how the water's moving, and understanding all that element of it, I think is really, really important. I tend to say to people, don't look for physical solutions to technical problems. I think guys will have a tendency of looking for physical solutions to technical problems sometimes. And surfing, if you surf clever and you learn to surf clever and you build your knowledge as well as your physical technique, you'll hopefully have a better, kind of more fulfilling emotional experience from it. I'm possibly on the slightly more tree hugging hippie end of the sort of surf coaching approach, but I really I just really love seeing people who kind of really get the most out of it and really connect and really grow technically but also emotionally, and then go on and do cool stuff. And if that then translates, if someone can do something in the water and it translates back in a positive way into the rest of their life, then fantastic. That's kind of, I guess, the ultimate win, but it's moving slightly. It's kind of combining. It's a very holistic approach to what we do. That's not an excuse for not delivering really accurate, good technical coaching. It's just being aware that maybe surfing better is a part of what could be beneficial from the experience. Get one of those Tibetan bowls or something.
Have you seen a big difference in, like, I'm guessing where you are, you're experiencing a big increase in surfing and the recreational surfer in the last few years. And what's your thoughts on etiquette? And are you seeing problems with the amount of people in the water where you are? What's it like?
I think surfing is a really good analogy for sustainability generally. I think it's a really good little kind of thing where you can look at surfing and then apply it across to lots of other stuff in the planet, which is there's a finite resource. There's only so much space. There's only so many waves. And when you have, if you have way too many people in that space, it kind of changes the experience for everyone. I think so. Surfing's kind of weird, right? No one in my family has ever surfed. I'm the first person in my family. Did you inherit surfing, or was it you did it yourself? Yeah. So there we go. We did the same thing. We kind of got curious, ended up somewhere, and probably thought at a particular stage, yeah, I can do this. This looks easy. I'll give that a go. I can do all the other stuff, and surfing's, surfing looks pretty easy. I'll just add that to my sort of list of stuff I can do. Yeah. And inevitably, you discover it's actually really difficult, and it's a tough thing to teach yourself. So much knowledge and counterintuitive. So my kind of point is, you inherit surfing, right? So most of the people I know that surf really well, surfed a long time, their dad surfed, their uncle surfed, their mum surfed, their aunt, they've inherited surfing, and so that with it, they've been taught all the subtleties and all those nuances produce a surfer. And I guess if you don't have that guidance, you're kind of just trying to work it out on your own. And there's a huge amount to work out, even for the point of, where is safe to go surfing? How do you get that information? You and I would have, we've all seen the guides or the things where it says, it refers to a wave as the best wave in Europe or something like that. And it's maybe not, you look at that and you're sitting in your office in London, or you do the thing of throwing. I did it once with a friend. We used to chuck the Storm Rider guide in the air and see where it came down and what page it landed on, to decide where to go sometimes, which is, it's an approach. And you have that, you can kind of look and you go, I'll go and ride that. I want to ride the best wave in Europe or the best wave in France or wherever it is. And what that's not telling you is actually the danger rating of it necessarily. So who is that the best wave for? I don't know. Is it the best wave to learn? Probably not. But and I think all those nuances are definitely getting articulated better. But I still think that journey kind of into surfing and progressing is it's evolving, but I'm not sure. The people we speak to, they tend to come through and they really love the approach that we have, and it's kind of something that they've been looking for. I would say it's more accessible now. And you mentioned Ruin, I hear nothing but really amazing things about what those guys do. But I also go to places and see absolute horror stories of kind of people just being, coaches essentially just going out and sometimes not being paid very well and going out and kind of just surfing for themselves, and all these people sort of clattering around, which, I think it would be terrifying if they kind of understood the risk that potentially they were at. But I think, sometimes ignorance is bliss. And I've seen that, and I'm sure you've seen that as well. And also I just feel a little upset that they're putting, there's quite a lot of trust and also money they've paid to be taught a skill and taught all the stuff that goes with it. And if that's not being done, I think it's a missed opportunity to educate and to essentially engage people in a much longer term surfing and coaching relationship. So I've sort of drifted. You keep asking really good questions, and I drift into these.
No,
So you're talking about like, is it a resource issue? Yes, but another part of me is like, I think people should be, especially coming out of lockdown, people need to be in nature again, and we need to be in the ocean, and we need to be in water. And I think you just need to use your common sense. It's not a particularly pleasant experience if it's a beach that's wall to wall with people crashing into each other on surfboards. I don't want to get hit with, I don't want to be wearing surfboards, other people's surfboards. So there's definitely surfing's boomed, but then sports, different sports will go through periods of big growth and booming. I think surfing, the evolution of the wetsuit and the evolution of the equipment now available to learn on has played, you can't underestimate the part that's played. And also, the fact that you can, like skiing now, you can earn a living as a surf coach, which is, I think it's great. That was my goal. I set out to prove that you could earn a living coaching surfing. And actually it didn't have to be, I guess initially, and you and I have had this conversation, I was quite performance focused. I thought, being the best surf coach meant you have to coach the best surfers. And I don't believe that anymore. I believe people that want to work in a high performance space with contest athletes can do that. I think it's a tiny number of people that can earn a living that way, but I think it's an amazing space to be in. I think how you take what these coaches are working on, what they're doing, and moving it into a fun, engaging, really rewarding space for recreational surfers is as challenging and as high performance, just without the same level of high performance outcome necessarily. It can be a really developed professional way of coaching, but just applied in a slightly different way. So the idea of high performance to me isn't necessarily about the best athletes in the world. It's about developing deep knowledge and applying it for your kind of speciality, your thing that you do.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Feel free to disagree with me.
No, I agree. But back to the etiquette thing, like you nailed it in terms of like, this is a whole bunch of people that have this easy access to equipment, car parks, etc. And yeah, they're completely naive. They don't know. Like, oh, I go here, I park. Everyone else is surfing out there, and they think, for example, there's a lot of soft tops who can only go straight on a wave that end up at First Point Malibu, getting in the way of people that can surf properly. Now, I don't think they're certainly not doing it on purpose or arrogance. They're just doing it because they don't know any. They're naive.
And then they get shouted at and they don't know why. And, that whole emotionally, what a horrible journey to be, that whole kind of thing. And that, I guess that engagement, I think some people as well, some people will engage coaching and some people won't. I mean, definitely, certainly when we started out, a lot more women took coaching than men. We saw it in our numbers and we saw it in our things. And yeah, that's definitely balanced out, which is great. But that was something that I saw early on. Our courses were, I think everything we did was pretty 70% women coming and taking coaching, wanting to learn how to do things properly. And it tended to be guys. I know I'm generalizing now, but it did tend to be guys just, will just have a go and, work it out for myself. I don't need, I don't need to be told how to do this. I think I've got it. Have you seen that? Or is that just?
It's definitely changing. People are.
Yeah, I'm gonna get in trouble now, aren't I?
No, because you're right.
I think I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna say what I see.
The women are much more open to coaching. They are, yeah. And men are like, oh, if it's surfing, you don't need a surf coach. But
do you get coached?
I have done a lot, and not at the moment. No, I'm been loving my 11-foot glider at the moment. So.
Ooh. Do you know what? Going back and just that experience of, I tell you what, there's a photo actually in my hallway. And it's one of my, actually I can get it. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. You're going to laugh.
It's cool.
I'll tell you what's cool about it. I remember that moment. I remember the wave. I remember the whole setup and the morning and the light and who was there. And
yeah.
I've got a friend who builds wooden boards.
Yeah.
And I've not ridden one, and I've been wanting to for ages, and he just happened to be there, and we swapped boards. And I was just like, the feeling of a different material and how it interacts with the wave and just cruising along. I mean, that was, and it just happened that someone took a photo of it as well. But I look at that photo and I remember that feeling and that moment. And you're talking about your 11 foot and just gliding along. And that was, just that moment, that feeling of just going with the wave and just experiencing a really different feeling. And I think that's the other thing that we try and encourage people to do, is go to different places on waves, try and explore a sort of a feeling spectrum rather than a sort of what they should be doing, or that's the thing about what should I be doing in the surf. Well, no, it's not about that. It's about, how does it feel? What is it, what's that like? How's that? And so when you talk about riding your 11-foot wave and just kind of cruising along, I love that kind of great, sometimes you get that amazing passenger feeling, and then you just sort of go, I'll chuck a turn, and you just drive your back foot and you bring it around, and then you settle again and it re-accelerates. And I think those little moments are, I think, it's great fun challenging yourself and surfing big waves, but some of the most blissed out moments are those smaller kind of. Am I right, or are you talking about you? I was suddenly going down this road, and you're going to say, "Well, actually, it's an 11-foot rhino chaser." It's a kind of no, you're a slightly different space to you, George.
No, you're totally right, man. Like some of my best surfs have been when the waves are, waist high and there's no one else out. But it's perfect to go out on the 11 foot and just make a section you didn't think was makeable because you were relaxed or whatever. And I think it's a good note to leave it on. George, can you tell us where listeners can find your website and your Instagram?
We've got, the website is georgessurfschool.com. The Instagram is @georgessurfschool. We'd love to see. Obviously we love coaching, and come and take a course, come and surf with us. If you're a coach out there, come and coach with us. Come and explore, jump on the bus. We're all on the same journey. It's nice to.
And you're still based at Poles F?
Still based at Poles F, yeah.
All right.
So we've got 2 beaches that we work with. We work with a few different beaches locally, but we're based out of Poles F.
All right, George, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely lovely to chat to you. Thanks, buddy.
Where to begin eludes me. Without you to remind me. Just take the step, just take the swing, just take the bite, just go all in. Where to begin eludes me. Rooting ever deeper. This myself endeavor. Ominous and daunting, crippling, undertaking. Just take the step, just take the swing, just take the bite, just go all in. Take the step, take the swing, take the bite, just take the bite, take the step, take the swing, take the bite, just go all in. Where to begin eludes me. Without you to remind me. Just